Hey guys, it's Vincent with VASCO Toys. On today's episode of Action VASCO, we'll take a look at my desert terrain diorama that has modular rock formations. Very excited to show you guys this piece. Let's take a look at this terrain diorama.
VASCO Toys. Action figure, dioramas, and props.
So the dimensions for this desert diorama is 13 inches across and 10.5 inches deep. It is made out of XPS insulation foam exclusively, except for the little VASCO Toys logo. And an interesting thing about this diorama piece is that this piece is all my scrap foam pieces. Even the base piece is sort of a scrap foam piece, basically a piece that I had that wasn't exactly square from another diorama that I had made, and so I repurposed that, and then the rock formations were made completely from recycled scrap foam pieces from other projects that wouldn't have been useful in any other way. So I wanted to try to, I always keep my scraps, and I wanted to try to get them used in a piece like this. So I mentioned the diorama is made out of XPS foam. It is painted with acrylic paints, and we primarily use dry brushing on that. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then we sealed this with Miniwax polyurethane. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you guys the base on its own and then the rock formations on their own, and we'll talk about those pieces. So here's the base piece, and I mentioned before the base is 13 inches wide, 10 inches deep. So one of the things I want to make sure I mention, I've mentioned it in previous videos, but in my opinion, one of the best terrain diorama builders and just in general diorama builders is Lawless Studios. And he is always a very kind guy. He's very talented, and I reach out to him sometimes just to get tips and kind of talk ideas through. And one of the things that whenever I'm making a terrain piece, I almost always go back to his page and look at things just to get inspired, because he does rock formations and terrain so well that, you know, I always just am in awe whenever I see any of his stuff. So I kind of try to take a look at that to get even more inspiration when I'm making my pieces. But so with this piece here, there are several permanent rocks that I glued on just with hot glue that I like to put on just to add a little bit more to the piece. There's several things going on here too with the way that this was cut. So around the perimeter, I use my hot wire foam cutter table to make it sort of just random kind of rock formation pieces. And then what I did with this one is in the front, I kind of had almost several different steps up, small steps, and that was just accomplished with a box cutter. So I would slash along where I wanted the indent to be made first up on top, and then I would just go in under and slice it like this and have it come out cleanly. You need to make sure that you use either a new box cutter or a new X-Acto knife in order to get clean cuts. Otherwise you'll get a lot of like fraying and stuff that you don't want. So I did that, and then I always take a ball of tin foil and I'll make little craters, little dents, and I'll kind of do that all through, and I'll vary the intensity of how hard I push to create different looks on it, because it's a terrain piece, so it's not going to look uniform. And then, like I said, so these pieces were just cut all with a box cutter, and then I decided where I wanted to place them. I wanted to place them sparingly. I wanted to leave most of this open so that, because it's a modular piece, you'd be able to place the rock formations wherever you want to put them. And if you're putting a bunch of rocks, like even smaller rocks throughout this, you're going to limit where you can put down a rock formation that it will be level. So I wanted to make sure I didn't do that. And you know, with things like dry brushing, you can kind of accomplish simulation of different kinds of textures and stuff on the terrain, so you don't always have to glue down the rock pieces. You can kind of have fun with the dry brushing. So that's what I did. And next thing we'll do is take a closer look at the rock formation pieces so I can talk about those a little bit. So here's the rock formation pieces. There are two. This is a single solid piece, and then this piece here, which is just a smaller piece that I wanted to include to give some more versatility to what you can do with the display and with ACBA here. So these are, the way that I did these is basically this piece here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main pieces that are glued onto each other. And so what I did was basically cut the basic shapes out for each one, and I always test it out before I glue it. So I cut the basic shapes out first, stack them, see if I think it looks like it could make for a good rock formation, and then I started doing the slicing into the rock formation, which is basically the same process I mentioned on the base, where I would go across where I want the indent to be and then slice under so it makes a clean cut with the blade. And you can see, like, you know, some of it continues on from piece to piece. And the other thing I want to mention too, so this is just the inch foam right here. And then these other pieces are all different thicknesses because I wanted it to, again, not look uniform. If this was in nature, it wouldn't be all the same thickness all the way up. And so that's why I decided to do it that way. I'm just going to kind of rotate this too so you guys can see. So aside from doing that, the main pieces I mentioned, then I went in and added in other pieces along the perimeter and just like these little stepping stones on the sides. So I'm just going to rotate this so you guys can kind of see it. And so those are all just hot glued. And then I painted it the nutmeg brown that I always use for my brown wash. And then I did a caramel color dry brushing to give it kind of more of a yellowish kind of orange look. And that was the first layer of regular paint after the wash. And then I did this cafe, I think it's Cafe a Lot is what it's called, by Anita's. And I dry brushed that on, I think, 2 layers. And then I went in with a Rivera tan and very, very lightly did some of this perimeter dry brushing that you see. And that's how I achieved this color. And then this little piece is just the same. It's the same paint scheme, of course, and it's a similar process to what I did here, but just at a much smaller scale. And I just wanted to be able to add this in because, you know, there's certain things that you can do from a photography standpoint. If you have these things and you can move them, it just gives so much more versatility to what you're able to do. So here's our first ACBA setup in this terrain diorama. We've got the Beskar Black Series Mandalorian, the Black Series Baby Yoda. This is the single release, not the 2-pack. Same with him. And then the Remnant Trooper in the diorama. And in this shot, what I'm trying to accomplish is, of course, the Remnant Trooper is approaching the Mandalorian, trying to capture Grogu, and Mandalorian, of course, is not going to have that happen. So they're going to get into a little bit of a firefight here, and we all know that stormtroopers can't aim for anything, so it's not going to end well for him. So with this setup though, we're using the diorama a little bit differently than you would in a straight up display. So this rock formation piece here is actually pushed back and is hanging off of the base to give us more depth between the two characters, the Mandalorian and the Remnant Trooper. And then you'll see in the back over there we have the smaller rock formation piece actually sitting on the ground to give, again, more of a view of terrain across the frame. So we're filling the space more in the shot. And so when I was talking about how modular dioramas can help you from a versatility standpoint with toy photography, these are the kinds of things that I mean when I allude to that type of thing. Here's the second ACBA shot that we have in this diorama, and this time we're using the Deluxe Marvel Legends War Machine, which is one of my favorite figures from 2020, and a big thanks to my wife for getting that for me as a Christmas present. In this shot, he is firing on an unseen enemy as he flies through a canyon, and we're using the modular rock pieces to simulate the tops of some mountains that would be in a canyon, and we are using a blue construction paper background to simulate the sky behind him, with some lights to also simulate sunlight in the shot here. So this guy is awesome. He has so many cool accessories, and I've just been thinking about all kinds of different ideas to use him in ever since I opened him, and I hope that you guys like this shot. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Action Vasco, where we looked at my desert terrain diorama. Obviously, we did several different ACBA setups in here with the figures that I have, but I want to know what figures you guys would like to photograph in this diorama. So comment below and let us know which figures you think would look good in there. Other than that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and follow us on social media at VASCO Toys. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next episode.